Tonight, the UN's top court orders Israel to prevent acts of genocide, but stops short of demanding a ceasefire. Also tonight, Donald Trump ordered to pay more than $100 million for defaming author E. Jean Carroll. 2 Malaysian nationals jailed for their role in the deadly 2002 Bali bombings. And can Aryna Sabalenka make it 2 from 2, or will a rising star cause an Oz Open upset? Good evening, Iskhander Razak with ABC News. The United Nations top court has stopped short of ordering a ceasefire in Gaza, but called on Israel to prevent genocidal acts. The International Court of Justice agreed to 6 emergency measures in its interim ruling in South Africa's genocide case against Israel. It found they were needed to protect against further severe and irreparable harm of Palestinians in Gaza.
Outside The Hague's Peace Palace, a sea of Palestinian flags. Down the road, dozens of Israel supporters, all gathered to watch this highly anticipated ruling.
The court concludes prima facie that South Africa has standing to submit to it the dispute with Israel concerning alleged violations of obligations under the Genocide Convention.
South Africa brought this case to the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Israeli lawyers reject this, claiming their military operations comply with international law following Hamas's October 7 attacks.
The court is acutely aware of the extent of the human tragedy that is unfolding in the region.
In their interim ruling, the majority of the 17-judge bench agreed to implement 6 emergency measures. Among them, a call for Israel to prevent any acts or incitement of genocide, a guarantee adequate humanitarian aid is reaching Gaza, and protection of any evidence of alleged crimes. But there was no order for a ceasefire, which South Africa requested.
I believe that in exercising the order, there would have to be a ceasefire. Without it, the order doesn't actually work.
The effect of the order that the ICJ has granted today is that there is a plausible case of genocide. This marks an important first in our quest to secure justice for the people of Gaza.
The World Court is a long way from the conflict in Gaza, but the decisions made here are legally binding for signatory states like Israel. The question now is, will this interim ruling be acted on, enforced, or ignored?
Like every country, Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state.
There's a long road ahead. A final outcome on the genocide claim is expected to take years. Isabella Higgins, ABC News, The Hague.
Palestinian communities around the world had high hopes for the International Court of Justice ruling. Global Affairs editor John Lyons was in Ramallah as the judgment was handed down.
From Yemen to Jordan, solidarity with Palestinians across the Arab world. Earlier, in the occupied West Bank, prayers and hope for a historic decision at the World Court. In Ramallah, the anticipation was palpable as Palestinians gathered to watch the ruling, at public screenings attended by their South African advocates.
It's 15 minutes to go until the ICJ's announcement. As a South African, what are you hoping?
I think in a nutshell that there would be an order that says ceasefire, that would give the people of Gaza and Palestinians generally a reprieve.
The 17 judges of the International Court of Justice have just walked out. Hundreds of people here, including foreign journalists, and the mood here, the anticipation is extremely high.
In the crowd were many overcome with emotion after months of war. Not all were pleased with the outcome.
The decision of the court wasn't that good. It wasn't for us or against us. Of course, I'm very happy for for people to know about us, about Gaza.
So what were you feeling while you were sitting there watching today?
I was disappointed because what I aspired for and I wanted is an immediate ceasefire and that all the humanitarian aid will go into Gaza. But let's not forget that this is a historic moment and we're very grateful and thankful for South Africa for taking the courage to file this case.
The reality for Palestinians is that whatever the court says, the war isn't going to stop anytime soon. John Lyons, ABC News, Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank.
Donald Trump has been ordered to pay more than $100 million in additional damages to writer E. Jean Carroll. The columnist sued the former president for defamation after he was found guilty of sexually assaulting her, but then continued to call her a liar.
An extraordinary victory for the woman who twice took on Donald Trump and won.
Carol, how do you feel?
A jury in New York awarded E. Jean Carroll the equivalent of more than 126 million Australian dollars in her second defamation case against the former president.
Does the smile say it all?
A separate civil trial last year had already found Mr. Trump liable for sexually abusing the writer in the 1990s and then defaming her by calling her a liar. This case focused on statements he made while he was president in 2019, which she argued made her the target of online abuse and death threats. Ms. Carroll's lawyers successfully asked for unusually high damages to try to stop Donald Trump's continued public attacks against her. This is a great victory for every woman who stands up when she's been knocked down, she said in a statement, and a huge defeat for every bully who has tried to keep a woman down. The former president described the verdict as absolutely ridiculous, and his legal team vowed to appeal.
Everybody's a right to defend themselves when they are wrongfully accused and to be able to say, I didn't do it.
Donald Trump is still facing another civil case in New York over fraud allegations, as well as 91 criminal charges in 4 prosecutions. But nothing has stopped his march towards again becoming the Republican nominee at this year's presidential election. Overcoming the political costs while the legal bills add up. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Washington.
Back home, and police are investigating an overnight fire in Melbourne's northwestern suburbs, which is being treated as suspicious. The fire started inside a house in Airport West just before 5 o'clock. When emergency crews arrived minutes later, it was fully alight. Flames spread into the roof and caused significant damage. Thankfully, no one was home at the time. The Prime Minister has condemned the actions of a neo-Nazi group who boarded a Sydney train while masked and dressed in black on Australia Day. He's described the scenes as shocking and horrifying, adding they have no place in Australia. Experts, however, warn far-right demonstrations could become more common as extremist groups recruit new followers online.
24 hours after a neo-Nazi group boarded a train in Sydney's north, Premier Chris Minns has flagged tougher laws against racist gestures.
Particularly in relation to white power salutes, or as they're so-called white power salutes.
I don't want to see people in balaclavas, dressed in black from head to toe, who are engaged in neo-Nazi activity in this country.
The group of more than 60 masked men were intercepted by police at North Sydney Station after they boarded the train a few stops earlier before congregating in a nearby park. Police issued 57 infringement notices and arrested 6 men who have since been released without charge.
They were told to stay away from Australia Day events. There is no place for this kind of fascism, neo-Nazism or far-right extremism on this great day, Australia Day.
The Prime Minister described the scenes as shocking.
I was horrified by those images. They have no role in Australia. We have seen a rise in neo-Nazi activity, on extreme right-wing activity. The Director General of ASIO has been warning of this for some time.
Experts say banning symbolic salutes in Victoria last year has been effective in limiting the reach of far-right extremist groups, but won't stop them from recruiting new members online.
Younger men are being drawn into these movements through engagement online, These groups are incredibly active in encrypted messaging applications like Telegram. We can anticipate that there will be more such demonstrations.
Chris Minns has promised a show of force by New South Wales Police if the group stages another demonstration. Leah Harris, ABC News, Sydney.
They've been honoured by the nation. Now the Joint Australians of the Year have issued a warning to the nation. Skin cancer treatment pioneers Georgina Long and Richard Scolyer say Australia's tanning culture is killing us. Despite all we know about sun damage and skin cancer, more than 1,600 Australians are expected to be diagnosed with melanoma this year.
Getting a skin cancer check for the first time in his life.
So having a look over the area, this is the only one that does stand out. It's a little bit different.
Beachgoer Branko Kalina will now need to see a specialist to see if a sunspot could be something more.
You just think, oh, well, it's not going to happen to me or it's not possible.
It's an attitude many Aussies share, and one which the Joint Australians of the Year say is killing us.
When it comes to tanning, we are swimming outside the flags.
Professors Georgina Long and Richard Scolyer are melanoma treatment pioneers. According to their research, more than 16,000 Australians will be diagnosed with melanoma this year, while 1,300 will die from it. At Warilla on the New South Wales south coast, Jay Allen has pulled up his truck to offer free skin checks.
That's why we got it here, so we can try and bring that rate down, save lives.
It's an issue that's close to his heart after surviving stage 3 melanoma.
I had 44 staples from my stomach to my thigh and I had to go for scans and blood tests every 3 months for 5 years. And, 32, I had the world at my feet and all of a sudden it changed overnight and my life was in the hands of my doctors.
The young generation is our future. We really need to start pushing out that awareness because what we do know is that skin cancer and the damage is done to your skin early on in your years.
What's an Australian summer without a day at the beach? And while the weather's not exactly the best here at South Narrabeen, nothing will stop these kids from the bush getting their first taste of the ocean. 30 Indigenous kids are embracing the surf and learning that even on cloudy days, sun safety is just as important.
I had stay in the shade when it's hot and stuff.
Some simple advice we could all follow. Ethan Ricks, ABC News.
In tennis, defending champion Aryna Sabalenka faces off against rising Chinese star Qinwen Zheng in the women's final of the Australian Open that gets underway shortly. Tom Maddox is at Melbourne Park and joins me now. Tom, Sabalenka will start as the hot favourite, but Zheng has impressed on her way to the final. What are we likely to see from this matchup?
Iskhander, this will be a battle between a genuine powerhouse of the competition in Sabalenka versus Zheng, who has enjoyed a swift rise up the ranks and has really sparked the hopes of her home nation in China. Sabalenka has hardly been challenged during her time here in Melbourne. She's blasted her way to the final without dropping a single set this entire tournament. She dominated American star Coco Gauff on Thursday, and her power hitting is a real feature of her game. She's betting to become just the second woman to win back-to-back titles here in a decade. Then Zheng, on the other hand, the 12th seed from China, she has previously only reached a quarter-final at a Grand Slam. So the 21-year-old is just the second Chinese player to reach the Australian Open final here. Of course, after her childhood idol Li Na won in 2014. So Zheng, at just 21 years of age, is already a big thing in her home country. Her semi-final win, an average of 5 million people tuned in China on one channel alone. So expect that number to rise significantly when she walks out onto Rod Laver Arena this evening.
Exactly. And Thomas, an Australian will feature in tonight's men's doubles final. Tell us about it.
36-year-old Matt Ebden from West Australia. He will team up with the Indian Rohan Bopanna in the final, the men's doubles final this evening. That match to follow the women's final on Rod Laver Arena. Matt Ebden, he has tasted some measure of success. The mixed doubles title he won here some years ago, but he lost in the men's doubles 2 years ago against none other than the Special Ks in Nick Kyrgios and Thanasi Kokkinakis. Bopanna, at the ripe old age of 43, He's proving to be a bit of an inspiration and recently became the #1 player in doubles in the world. And of course, Isk, we have already the men's finalists that will be on court tomorrow night. There'll be no Novak Djokovic, of course. Russia's Daniil Medvedev will play the young Italian gun in Yannick Sinner. That's after Medvedev fought back remarkably to beat Alexander Zverev in 5 epic sets.
Daniil Medvedev knows he'll need more than just a slice of good luck to get past Yannick Sinner.
Oh, you're kidding. He's playing better than before, especially end of the season. He started playing whole different level. So if I want to beat him, I have to raise my level.
Sinner's stunning win over Novak Djokovic prompted this response from the world #1.
This is one of the worst Grand Slam matches I've ever played.
The young Italian has won his past 3 matches against Medvedev, but the Russian will use his experience. Tomorrow will be his 3rd Australian Open final. Sinner is making his Grand Slam debut.
I have no idea how Yannick is going to be, but me, myself, I have this experience. I will try my best. I will fight for my life.
That's out. And Medvedev battles back from the brink.
Medvedev drew on his mental strength to recover from 2 sets to love down against Alexander Zverev, going on to win in 5 epic sets.
I was a little bit lost, but during the 3rd set, I started saying to myself that if I lose this match, I just want to be proud of myself.
Zverev says the match became harder because of an illness he picked up in the quarterfinals.
I lost it because of a physical state, not because of tennis, and that is for me disappointing.
The physical state of the 2 finalists could be vital tomorrow. Medvedev has twice fought back from 2 sets down, while Sinner has barely raised a sweat, losing just 1 set for the entire tournament. Tom Maddox, ABC News, Melbourne Park.
Two Malaysian nationals will serve just 5 years in confinement for their role in the 2002 Bali bombings. The men were sentenced by a military court in Guantanamo Bay over the attack, which killed more than 200 people, including 88 Australians. Prosecutors allege they were key lieutenants to plot ringleader Hambali, who will face trial in March next year. The jury initially handed down a 23-year sentence, but that was overruled by a judge as part of a plea deal. Sports and media entrepreneur and businessman Vince McMahon has resigned from World Wrestling Entertainment's parent company in the wake of sexual misconduct allegations. A lawsuit filed by a former employee, Janelle Grant, alleges McMahon sexually assaulted and trafficked her to entice wrestling talent. McMahon stepped down as WWE CEO in 2022 amid an investigation into similar allegations. He denies any wrongdoing and says the claims are a distortion of the truth. The popularity of smartwatches is booming, driven by Aussies wanting to be healthier. Almost 4 in 10 Australians own a smartwatch, which collects data from how much we walk or sleep to the patterns of our heartbeats. While they can motivate you to be more active, researchers say it's important to understand the data may not be as accurate as you think.
We're measuring the maximum amount of oxygen Dr. Richard Alcock's body can use, otherwise known as his VO2 max. It's the gold standard for measuring a person's cardiovascular fitness. But how does an expert physiologist with all these machines compare to this, a smartwatch? Recent studies show a general consensus on their strengths and limitations. The studies found logging how many steps you take is relatively accurate with most wearables. Things start to fall apart though when you try to track metrics like how many calories you're burning. Resting heart rate readings can be quite good, but some watches struggle once you start exercising. They can also find it difficult to track other metrics like blood pressure and the quality of your sleep. This test is grueling.
Brilliant. Go through the results. Your VO2 today was about 62.5 in terms of what your Garmin predicted was, 56. Yeah, so
about 10% off.
So that correlates relatively well at 50.
The difference between these results is due to the watch not measuring Dr. Alcock's oxygen levels. It estimates based on heart rate and speed.
You're almost touching on this sort of Olympic level athlete for your age.
While it's not perfect, the devices are sold as an easy and accessible way of tracking your health and fitness.
Everyday use for the general public, they're great. To motivate fitness, to look at the amount of steps, track what their weight's doing, again, calorie intake versus expenditure. I think it's getting people exercising simply by having the watch.
Market data estimates more than 36% of Australians own a smart wrist wearable, and demand is growing.
Every brand uses different technology, which makes things difficult for clinicians and researchers trying to figure out whether smartwatches actually help us live healthier. All the tiny data points from this can be thought of as parts of your digital twin. There's a version of you made entirely of your data.
My principal areas of research is in sports science and strength and conditioning.
Professor Sophia Nymphius is a sports scientist working with elite-level athletes. She makes use of their digital twins, including data from smart wearables, to help maximise performance.
Elite athletes have a very specific training environment that is very different to the average consumer.
For most people with a less disciplined lifestyle, the watches tend to provide less accurate data.
I have different settings on my watch, and it shows me how the pace changed throughout the run. For some people, seeing those numbers can be vastly discouraging and may reduce their ability to maintain an exercise routine. We do need to acknowledge the negatives, that there's a psychological component to fully trusting and investing in a number on your watch.
Professor Nymphius suggests looking at trends over longer periods of time instead of obsessing over your daily digits. Kason Ho, ABC News.
In Alice Springs, youth crime continues to dominate the daily headlines. But young people say rap classes are helping them process their emotions and stay on track.
In a tiny makeshift studio in the heart of Alice Springs, 18-year-old James Nelson raps to a beat. His words flow in a steady stream as he describes the pressures of growing up in the embattled outback town.
Gets my mind off everything, like mental health issues.
James started taking rap classes last year after a sudden loss in his family. He says it's helped him process his emotions and stay on track.
I was going through a lot of stuff. I just lost my uncle and I couldn't sleep at night. But then I started rapping, like writing down stuff. And it helped me with a lot of things.
I'm sick and tired of... James is just one young student of Alice Springs rapper Dan McAleer, also known as Dan the Underdog. In addition to coaching young people in the community like James, Dan runs classes at the local youth detention centre, continuing to work with inmates once they're released.
I think it definitely helps young people to process and maybe even if it's not in processing, at least like getting them emotions out. You know what I mean? Like let it out in the booth instead of doing something, potentially negative.
Territory families say they're seeing high engagement with the rap classes at the local youth detention centre, and it's helping young people express themselves and process life experiences.
If I can focus on this for a minute, you know what I mean, and make something that I'm proud of, man, I'm gonna feel better as a person.
If I help young people to stop doing all that stuff, like bad stuff, clear their mind. Yo, I'm back again, ready, specific again.
A positive outlet for local young people. Charmaine Allison, ABC News, Alice Springs.
Back to sport, and the second test between Australia and the West Indies remains delicately poised, with the tourists building a solid second inning lead on day 3. Nathan Lyon, however, has done some damage with the ball, claiming key wickets.
After navigating a difficult 40 minutes under lights with just the loss of Tajnarine Chanderpaul on day 2, the West Indies set their minds to building a big second innings lead. Kirk McKenzie playing beautiful cricket early on day 3.
Oh, divine.
He and captain Craig Braithwaite scored at a healthy rate as their partnership passed 50 and the lead neared 100.
Gets that one and past Nathan Lyon.
But the introduction of Cameron Green brought about a wicket.
In the air and out.
Pat Cummins' bowling changes continued to pay dividends, Nathan Lyon striking in his first over. And it should have been an even better session for Australia, but uncharacteristic poor fielding proved costly.
There it is! Don't tell me it went down.
Fielding continued to plague the hosts, a Mitch Marsh effort drawing the ire of both Nathan Lyon and the commentators.
The misfield was bad. The fact that he just loped after it was worse.
Lyon carried on and was rewarded when Alec Athanase fished at one outside off stump, Steve Smith making no mistake in the slips. But there was still a lot of work ahead for the hosts, with Cavum Hodge showing his first innings performance was no fluke, as the West Indies steadily built a competitive second innings total. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
An unbeaten knock of 72 from Beth Mooney has carried Australia to an 8-wicket victory over South Africa in their first T20 international in Canberra. In the first game of a 7-match multi-format series, Darcy Brown and Elise Perry both took 2 wickets as the visitors set a target of 148 to win. Australia captain Elisa Healy overcame illness to open the batting, falling just short of a half-century. But it was Mooney who led the charge, hitting 12 boundaries for the home side. The opener hit the winning runs early in the final over, keeping Australia's 100% record against South Africa intact. Parkrun is celebrating its 1 millionth runner, crossing the finishing line at one of its 500 weekly races. Today's event was in Melbourne's Albert Park. The venue is one of Parkrun's most popular courses, with around 1,000 participants gently but steadily taking on the scenic 5-kilometre course every Saturday morning. The volunteer run event was first launched in 2011 and is free for people of all ages and all abilities. And if you're wondering, Doja Cat has just come in at #1 on Triple J's Hottest 100 with her song Paint the Town Red. G-Flip claims second place with the song The Worst Person Alive. Now to the weather. And overnight minimum temperatures were generally below average and mostly ranged between 7 and 12 degrees. The coldest was 1 degree at Mount Hotham and Mount Baw Baw. It was a mostly clear morning across the state. Cloud built during the day in the southwest and central district, remaining mostly clear in the north and southeast. Maximum temperatures were generally below average and mostly range from 21 to 25 degrees. The state's top of 29 degrees was recorded in Walpeep and Albury-Wodonga. In Melbourne, the temperature reached a high of 24.7 degrees at 3:30. The high in Geelong was 25. Interstate today was partly cloudy in Hobart, Sydney and Brisbane, mostly sunny in Adelaide, wet in Darwin and sunny in Perth. The satellite image shows cloud over much of northern Australia with embedded squalls in the top end. A thick band of cloud positioned in central Queensland extends down into New South Wales. There's some low-level cloud along coastal parts of New South Wales, Victoria, southeastern SA and southeastern Western Australia. A ridge of high pressure lies over Victoria until Monday, when an inland trough extends over the north and another weak trough moves across southern districts. On Tuesday, the next ridge will build over the state and will remain in place until the weekend. Troughs and lows will generate rain, showers and storms over parts of WA's north, the NT, Queensland and New South Wales's northeast. Onshore flow should bring a few showers to New South Wales's east and southeast WA. For the capital cities tomorrow, mostly sunny in Perth and Adelaide, partly cloudy in Hobart, a shower or two in Sydney, possible storms for Brisbane and Darwin. Back home, dry and mild to warm and mostly sunny in the north, 32 in Mildura, 28 in Bendigo, but expect some isolated morning showers along the coast. Those showers should clear by the evening, 29 for Lake Eildon, 23 degrees in Wonthaggi, so pretty pleasant conditions for most of the state unless the wind picks up too much on the coastline. Speaking of the wind, on the bay, westerly winds 10 to 15 knots turning south to southwesterly, below 10 knots in the middle of the day, then becoming south to southeasterly in the early afternoon, waves around 1 metre. A strong wind warning for central Gippsland coast and east Gippsland coast. For Melbourne tomorrow, a partly cloudy morning, clearing to a mostly sunny afternoon, heading for a high of 24 after a low of 16. Good conditions for the tennis. Looking ahead, Monday in Melbourne, sunny and 28. Tuesday, cloudy and 23. Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, partly cloudy, 22, 24 and 22. Saturday, sunny and 30 degrees. And that's it for this evening's bulletin. Thanks for your company. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe. Go well. Good night.